Hello. I am a survivor of a defective Chrysler vehicle. Yes, the term victim applies, but I am fighting to survive that victimization. If you have been injured or lost a loved one as a result of a defective vehicle, then you know exactly what I mean. My name is Jeremy Warrener. In October of 2005, I was on my way home from work when another driver hit my new Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. I was forced off the road, and the damage from the accident left me pinned in the vehicle. I had several severe injuries, all of which would have healed, but then a few minutes after the accident, a fire ignited in the engine. The fire burned through the firewall into the passenger compartment, and 5.5 weeks later, I awoke from a medically induced coma to learn that both of my legs had been amputated from above the knee due to 4th-degree burns. From the moment I woke up in that hospital bed, I have been faced with the challenge of starting my life over with an acquired disability. An extremely difficult challenge that I will overcome, but should never have had to face. If you have suffered a similar tragedy, then you understand the physical, emotional, and financial stress such an event puts on you and your family. Out of a desire to find out what had caused the fire, we hired several engineers to examine the wreckage of my Jeep. What they learned was disturbing to say the least. Their conclusion was that a defective design had allowed me to become pinned in the vehicle and allowed the fire to ignite. The fire itself was caused by a plastic brake fluid reservoir that was not protected from impact. Plastic brake fluid reservoirs are not uncommon, but Chrysler put a flammable liquid in a plastic container in a hot engine and failed to protect it, which is a recipe for disaster. For that reason, I hold Chrysler responsible for my injuries and feel that they should recall all vehicles that have these defects. To the best of my knowledge, no recalls have ever been issued. Whether you were injured or lost a loved one as a result of a Chrysler or GM vehicle, we have at least one thing in common. We have both tried to hold the vehicle manufacturer accountable in court. In July of 2006, I filed a lawsuit against Chrysler, but their attorneys managed to delay the court proceedings until my case could be swept under the rug during their bankruptcy process. Imagine my shock when I learned that not only had Chrysler been able to get out of liability for all of our pending claims without ever going to court, but that they had also been relieved of all future claims related to pre-bankruptcy vehicles as well. During GM's bankruptcy process, pressure from consumer groups like the American Association for Justice, the Center for Justice and Democracy, and Consumers for Auto Reliability and Safety convinced GM to accept liability for the future claims. But, as you know, GM refused liability for their pending claims too. There are approximately 1,300 of us who have now been blocked from access to the justice system in cases directly related to the cause of our acquired disabilities or the wrongful deaths of loved ones. While Chrysler was still in bankruptcy court, I began writing letters to my congressmen and my senators. I didn't know if it would do any good, but I can tell you now that it has. My senator, Richard Lugar from Indiana, wrote a letter to the President's Auto Task Force in an attempt to make them aware of this issue. I was invited to Washington, D.C. on several occasions with other victims to speak with lawmakers. I submitted written testimony to the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. After reading my testimony, my congressman, Andre Carson, introduced H.R. 3088, the Jeremy Warrener Consumer Protection Act, in an attempt to right this wrong. I was then invited to personally testify before the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Commercial and Administrative Law in a hearing about this issue. I can tell you that they have listened, that many senators and congressmen are sympathetic, and that they want to take action to resolve this. In August, as a result of congressional pressure, Chrysler finally agreed to accept responsibility for future claims. Unfortunately, it's now clear that neither Chrysler nor GM will do the right thing and address the pending claims in court. The only hope that we have for justice is going to come from new legislation. Now that Chrysler has accepted the future claims, it should be easier to get legislation through Congress. Currently, the only legislation that has been introduced is H.R. 3088 in the House of Representatives, which requires any auto manufacturer who receives money from the government to purchase insurance that would be retroactive to address our pending claims as well as the future claims. I have spoken with several senatorial offices, and there is interest in introducing legislation in the Senate, but they are not sure what that legislation will be. There is also doubt among lawmakers that any legislation will receive enough support to pass through Congress without a full understanding of the impact of our losses. Our only hope is to present Congress with a full picture of who has been injured or killed, how those injuries or deaths have affected our lives, and what financial impact our suffering has on the states in which we live. Many of us have permanent life-altering acquired disabilities as a result of defective Chrysler or GM vehicles. Others have lost parents, spouses, and children and suffer from disabling depression. In most cases, our states are paying to support us through disability income, Medicare, Medicaid, and state-funded vocational rehabilitation services. The taxpayers are paying for liabilities that belong to Chrysler and GM. This is information that our representatives in Congress need to know. The only hope for us to have our cases heard is to stand together now. We can do this by making certain that our attorneys communicate the information about our cases to the consumer groups that are putting this picture together for Congress. Attached to this email is a form that covers the information we need. Please fill this out or have your attorney fill it out and send it to one of the 2 email addresses or the fax number located at the bottom of the form. Please do this as soon as possible. The sooner we can get this information to Congress, the faster they can find a solution. Also, please share your story with your senators and representatives. It does help, and our chances will increase dramatically if they have heard from you personally. There is a link in this email that will help you find their contact information if you do not already have it. Currently, we only have information on a handful of cases, but there are over 1,300 of us out there. There is strength in numbers. If we all speak out together, then the legislation that we need will get introduced, and we will be that much closer to our day in court. Thank you for your time.